Most people don't stay broke because they don't make enough money. They stay broke because of habits. Quiet, invisible habits that feel normal. Habits that look responsible, sometimes even smart. Habits that slowly drain your future without you noticing. The strange part is this: many of the behaviors that keep people financially stuck are the same behaviors society actually rewards. Working harder, buying things that make you feel successful, avoiding financial risk. On the surface, those sound like good decisions. But underneath, they're often the exact patterns that trap people in the same financial position for decades. Psychologists call this automatic behavior, actions repeated so often they become part of your identity. And once a habit becomes part of who you think you are, changing it becomes incredibly difficult. In this video, we're going to break down 7 money habits that quietly keep people broke, not because they're obvious mistakes, but because they feel completely normal. And one of these habits, the one most people believe is the responsible choice, is actually the most dangerous of all. But first, there's a pattern that appears in almost every financial struggle story. A pattern most people never even question. My name is Aiden, and if you find this kind of thinking useful, consider subscribing. It helps the channel reach more people who might need to hear it. Let's start with the first habit, the "I'll fix it later" habit. Imagine someone gets their first real paycheck. It feels amazing. After years of studying, working part-time jobs, or struggling through school, money is finally coming in regularly. For the first time, life feels stable, so they celebrate a little. A nicer phone, eating out more often, maybe upgrading their car. Nothing extreme, just small lifestyle improvements. And they tell themselves something that sounds completely reasonable. "I'll start saving later." Not when money is tight, not when they're just starting out. Later, when they get the promotion, when their salary increases, when things are more comfortable. The problem is that later almost never arrives, because lifestyle expands faster than income. This is called lifestyle inflation, and it's one of the most powerful financial traps in modern life. Every time income increases, spending quietly increases with it. You move to a slightly nicer apartment. You upgrade your subscriptions. You travel a bit more. Individually, each decision seems harmless. But psychologically, something important is happening. Your brain is resetting what it considers normal. And once a lifestyle becomes normal, downgrading feels like failure, even if it's financially smarter. This is why someone earning $40,000 can feel financially stable, while someone earning $120,000 still feels broke. Because the real issue isn't income, it's timing. People delay building financial habits until they feel comfortable. But financial stability actually comes from building those habits before comfort arrives. Saving early feels small, almost pointless. But money has one superpower most people underestimate: time. 10 years of small investing can beat 5 years of aggressive saving. Not because the amount is bigger, but because time multiplies decisions. Which brings us to the second habit, one that looks productive, ambitious, and even admirable, but quietly keeps millions of people stuck in the same financial cycle: the "work harder, not smarter" trap. There's a belief that runs deep in American culture. If you want more money, you should just work harder, take more shifts, work overtime, hustle on weekends, say yes to every opportunity. And at first, this strategy works. Working more hours does increase income, but there's a hidden psychological trap inside this mindset. Because when people focus only on working harder, they often stop thinking about how money actually grows. They trade time for income, forever. Think about it this way: there are only 24 hours in a day, which means income based purely on labor has a built-in ceiling. You can work harder, but only up to a point. Eventually, you hit limits. Exhaustion, burnout, family responsibilities, health. And when that happens, income stops growing. But wealth doesn't come from income alone. It comes from ownership. Ownership of investments. Ownership of businesses. Ownership of assets that grow while you sleep. This is why two people with the exact same salary can end up in completely different financial situations. One spends years working harder to earn more. The other spends time learning how to turn income into assets. At first, the difference is invisible. Both people appear to live similar lives. But 10 years later, one person still depends completely on their next paycheck, and the other has money that works independently of their time. The irony is that society celebrates the first person more, the one who is always busy, always grinding, always exhausted, because hard work is visible, but financial leverage is quiet. It happens in the background, slowly, almost invisibly, until one day the gap becomes impossible to ignore. But there's another habit that quietly destroys people's finances, and it doesn't look like hard work. In fact, it usually feels feels like rewarding yourself. The "I deserve this" spending loop. After a long week of work, something very predictable happens. You're tired, your brain is drained, and your self-control is lower than usual. So you do something small to make yourself feel better. You order takeout instead of cooking. You buy something online. Maybe it's clothes. Maybe it's tech. Maybe it's something you didn't even plan to buy. And in that moment, the justification appears instantly. I deserve this. And to be fair, you probably do. The problem isn't the purchase itself. The problem is the psychology behind the pattern. Behavioral economists call this reward-based spending. Your brain starts associating spending money with emotional relief. Bad day by something, stress by something, bored by something, and every time this loop repeats, the brain strengthens the connection. Money slowly becomes a tool for mood regulation. The danger is that these purchases rarely feel significant. It's not a sports car. It's small things. $18 here, $40 there, $120 on something you barely use. Individually, they don't feel like financial mistakes. But psychologically, they create something far more powerful than a single big purchase. They create a habit loop. Cue stress or boredom. Action spending. Reward temporary dopamine. And over time, the brain begins to expect that reward, which means the spending becomes automatic. This is why some people feel financially stuck even when they're not making obviously reckless decisions. Because the real cost of these purchases isn't just the money. It's the future opportunities that money could have created. Small daily spending decisions quietly compete with long-term wealth building. And the brain almost always chooses the option that delivers immediate reward. But if there's one habit that silently destroys more financial progress than almost anything else, it's not spending. It's something that looks incredibly responsible. In fact, many people believe this habit makes them financially safe, when in reality, it's often the exact reason their money never grows. The playing it safe illusion. For most people, financial safety means one thing: don't take risks, save money, avoid investing if it feels complicated, keep cash where it's safe. And on the surface, this sounds like the responsible path. After all, losing money feels far worse than missing an opportunity. Psychologists call this loss aversion, the human tendency to fear losses more than we value gains. It's the same reason people hesitate to invest. The market feels unpredictable. Headlines talk about crashes. Stories about people losing money spread much faster than stories about long-term growth. So many people choose what feels safe. They keep their savings in accounts that barely grow. Year after year, the balance slowly increases, and it feels like progress. But something quiet is happening in the background. Inflation. Inflation is the invisible force that slowly reduces what your money can actually buy. If inflation averages around 3% per year, and your money grows at 1% or less, the math becomes uncomfortable. Your money isn't growing. It's shrinking in real value. Slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. This is why people can save diligently for years, and still feel like they're not getting ahead. Because saving alone protects money, but investing grows it. The wealth gap often isn't created by income differences. It's created by participation. Some people participate in assets that grow, businesses, markets, real estate. Others stay on the sidelines, waiting for the right time that never feels safe enough. And over decades, that difference compounds into something massive. But there's another habit that quietly drains people's financial potential. And it doesn't come from fear. It comes from something far more subtle. Comparison. The comparison trap. There's a quiet psychological force shaping how people spend money every single day. Not logic. Not long-term planning. Comparison. Humans are wired to measure success relative to the people around them. Not in absolute terms. Relative terms. You don't evaluate your car based on its engineering. You evaluate it based on what other people drive. You don't judge your apartment by square footage. You judge it by what your friends' places look like. And in the age of social media, this comparison effect has been amplified dramatically. Because now you're not just comparing yourself to coworkers or neighbors. You're comparing yourself to thousands of carefully curated lives online. People posting vacations, new homes, luxury purchases, career milestones. But what you're seeing is rarely the full picture. It's a highlight reel. The problem is that the brain doesn't treat it like one. Instead, it quietly adjusts your internal definition of what normal success looks like. And once that standard shifts, spending often follows. Maybe it's upgrading your phone earlier than necessary. Maybe it's stretching your budget for a nicer apartment. Maybe it's buying things that signal progress, even if they slow down your actual financial progress. Economists call this status spending. Spending spending not for utility, but for perception. And the tricky part is that status spending often happens without conscious intention. You don't think, I'm buying this to compete. You think, this feels like the next logical step. But when spending decisions are driven by comparison instead of purpose, something dangerous happens. Your financial goals slowly become external. They stop being about security, freedom, or opportunity, and start being about keeping up, which leads directly to the final habit, the one that quietly locks people into the same financial position for decades. And unlike the others, most people never realize they're doing it. The no clear direction habit. Here's the uncomfortable truth behind most financial struggles. It's not income. It's not intelligence. It's lack of direction. Most people have extremely detailed plans for short-term spending. They know what car they want next, where they want to travel, what they want to upgrade in their home. But ask the same person a different question. What does financial freedom actually look like for you? And the answer usually becomes vague. Not worrying about money, being comfortable, retiring someday. The problem is that vague goals rarely produce precise behavior. Your brain needs clear targets to organize decisions. Without them, financial choices default to convenience and emotion. Saving feels optional, investing feels abstract, and spending becomes the easiest immediate reward. Think of it like driving. If you don't know where you're going, every road feels acceptable. You might move constantly, you might even feel busy, but movement without direction doesn't guarantee progress. Financially, this shows up as years of activity without meaningful change. People work hard, they earn money, they spend responsibly most of the time, but because there's no clear financial destination, every decision becomes isolated. There's no system connecting today's choices to tomorrow's outcomes. And this is where the real shift happens. When people become intentional about money, their habits change almost automatically. Spending becomes more selective, saving becomes more purposeful, investing becomes easier to stick with, not because discipline suddenly appears, but because the direction is clear. And once direction is clear, every dollar starts acting like a small decision about the future, not just the present. The truth is, staying broke usually isn't the result of one catastrophic mistake. It's the result of small habits repeated for years. Delaying saving, trading time for money forever, spending for emotional rewards, playing too safe with money, comparing lifestyles, and moving financially without a clear destination. Individually, each habit feels harmless. Together, they quietly shape the trajectory of an entire life. If this video made you think differently about money, take a second to like the video, share it with someone who might need to hear it, and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into psychology, habits, and financial thinking. Because sometimes, the most powerful financial change doesn't start with earning more. It starts with seeing your habits clearly for the first time.